Hi, and welcome back to our health communication. This week's summary lecture is not on the book. We're going to be reading for this week and next week some readings on entertainment education. And I am really excited about this particular part of the unit because it's the stuff that I study myself. I'm interested in health campaigns and things like that, but I'm particularly interested in how we can shape people's health beliefs and behaviors using entertainment messages. So let me explain what that means. What do we mean by entertainment education? Well, really any use of entertainment to sort of be a vehicle for a health message. And I'll expand this. It's not always about health, too. Sometimes it can be about social change, too, as some of the examples in your book talked about. So maybe it's not necessarily about helping people improve their eating habits. It could also be about things like making spousal abuse less acceptable and things like that. So that's what I mean by social change. So the original definitions of entertainment education considered this to be a purposeful endeavor, and a lot of the research that has gone into this, and actually pretty much all the shows that were mentioned in your reading would fit under the classic definition of entertainment education because it is supposed to be purposeful too. Now, next week we'll talk about some examples that might qualify that aren't necessarily purposeful. But the idea is that there have been messages that have specifically been designed to be embedded into some sort of entertainment media. Okay, importantly, I keep saying that. What do I mean by entertainment media? Well, anything that's sort of designed for entertainment. It could be television shows, it could be dramas, radio programs, even video games. There's a whole category of entertainment education items that are called serious video games, which they're serious because they're video games that tackle real world issues in hopes of changing people's attitudes or behaviors. One of the classic ones is called Darfur is Dying. If I think about it, I'll try to post it on eCampus later so you can see it. But you can just go to darfurisdying.com, and essentially it's a game that puts you in the shoes of a Darfurian refugee in hopes of giving you sort of a feel for what it's like to be a refugee. So that's why it's serious, because it's kind of like, whoa, that's really real. But the idea of the game is to raise awareness about genocide, and it also has little tools built into it that can encourage people to write their legislatures or donate money or learn more about the situation. So again, it's entertainment because it's a video game, but it's education because the purpose of the game, right, this is to actually inform people and maybe even persuade people. So again, another example, it's not necessarily linked to health. But you'll notice most of the things that I mentioned, even to some extent games, right, there's usually a narrative quality. We think about it, entertainment education often as being associated with storytelling, particularly like long-running serials. You'll notice a lot of the examples in there, maybe they were children's shows or soap operas, even radio soap operas, which have been implemented a lot because sometimes where entertainment education campaigns have been very popular are in countries that maybe don't have a high percentage of people that own television. So radio ends up being the best place to sort of put on these entertainment education programs. And there's a lot, your book mentions quite a few actually. In fact, they had all the P's there, and I don't, they're all good and they're all true, and I might even have them on the reading quizzes, but for summary's sake, I wanted to just sort of stick with, the advantage of entertainment education, the 9 P's. I'm not going to go through 9, but I want to pick out some of the ones that I think that speak to me at least the most. One of them, as I mentioned before, is, a lot of times entertainment education takes place in a serial. It's not like serial, like, that's my serial impression, but not like but like in a serial way. So it's not just a one-time show or a one-time advertisement, right? It would be in a long-running show. So it would be something where you were seeing characters sort of addressing different health or social issues week after week. And the neat thing about that is it encourages repeat exposure to the message. So even like in the instance of Darfur is Dying that I talked about, right? If the game is enjoyable, presumably people are going to want to play it more often. So it's a neat way to get people more involved with your message because they want to come back for more. Another interesting thing that relates back to a theory that we've talked about before is that entertainment education usually gives people role models. It doesn't just tell them what they should do, it shows them, because you see people who are enacting either the behaviors that are desirable or the behaviors that you're trying to get people to stop because they're undesirable. And this, really, I should mention, we talked about social cognitive theory briefly before, but the foundations of entertainment education are really rooted in social cognitive theory, which is all about social learning, how we can learn by watching others. We can learn things not by doing them ourselves, but sometimes by just watching other people do them. And so the theory really focuses on how is it that we can persuade people to start doing something based on something that they've seen somebody else do. So we've got to instill that motivation in them. And one thing that entertainment education has really done quite a bit is try to figure out how to make role models that people will want to emulate or people will not want to emulate. We've got, this is listed in the reading too, there's positive role models who are performing behaviors that are desirable, and presumably you want the viewer or you want the listener to like those characters so that they too will want to model that behavior. But you also need negative role models. You need people who are doing the wrong things, and usually these are characters who are bad guys, right? Or people that you don't actually want to emulate. So that's sort of another way of giving people a role model that they want to avoid, right? That they're showing the behaviors that somebody wouldn't want to engage in. I was thinking, and I can't remember it right now, but in grad school we watched a South African entertainment education soap opera, and the negative role model was a very promiscuous person who liked to go around and have you know, unprotected sex with people. And he wasn't a very nice person. He wasn't somebody that you wanted to be like. So the idea was that, or the hope behind that design was that if you show an undesirable person doing undesirable things, the viewers will not want to be like that person in any way, and they'll stay away from it. But you also have what are called transitional role models, which are role models who change as they go along, right? So they start off maybe doing the bad behaviors, but as they get more information or they learn, they actually change into somebody doing the positive behaviors you would want. So it would be like if the promiscuous person learned about some safe sex practices, and so they adopted them, and so you can actually see the transformation from them going from doing the wrong thing to doing the right thing. And those role models are particularly important because they raise people's self-efficacy. Remember, we've talked about this one before too, right? When we're talking about health campaigns and different theories, because we know that even if people know what the right thing to do is, sometimes they might not feel like they have the power to do it. And sometimes seeing a role model who overcomes different barriers and actually changes can be very inspirational and make people feel like they are more efficacious and they can actually engage in these behaviors too. So again, role models. Another really neat thing about entertainment education is because, right, we're following people's stories, even if they're fictional, right? Maybe especially because they're fictional, and we can sort of immerse ourselves in a story. The emotions attached to these characters and these stories tend to be very high, and emotion is highly persuadable, and entertainment education can kind of take advantage of people's strong emotions that they have, either for the characters, maybe they feel like the characters are friends, or they identify with the characters, and it's just a more potent way of getting the message across. The other neat thing about entertainment education is that because it's not necessarily like an in-your-face lecture. It's not me doing a summary lecture and telling you, no, you should, you know, use protection when you have sex or whatever. Because these messages, whatever the messages are embedded into an entertaining format, it's more easy to digest. Entertainment education allows health communicators to sort of talk to people about very sensitive issues that maybe wouldn't be as easy to talk to, or the messages wouldn't be as well received in a non-entertaining format. This puts people at ease. They feel like they're watching a show, and they're not having to go through the awkwardness of sort of like addressing perhaps a sensitive topic like sexually transmitted diseases, for instance, head on. It gives it this nice little packaging that people can feel a little bit more comfortable with. And also because, again, getting back to these, the advantage of sort of having a narrative and having a serial that traces characters over time. And again, I know it's not all character-based, video games, of course, too. But over time, it can actually change people's perceptions of social norms a little bit. the media, we have has this effect anyway, right? That's why we're concerned about things like, well, thinking about cultivation theory, why we're concerned about maybe the attitude that smoking is a normal behavior, and we don't want to see a lot of our role models on television smoking, because we don't want the social norm to be that that's what's normal. The same way that you can actually insert messages about what's normal and what's not, very, very subtly, right? You don't actually have to make a statement that this is normal or not, but as people are watching the characters that they like, and they're seeing, for instance, that it's not socially desirable to have like very large families, a big I know this is going to strike some of you as weird, but in some countries there's been a lot of effort for better family planning to make it, because they have population problems and poverty issues, and so a lot of it has been about teaching women about sort of like what's normal and what's not, as far as both their sexual protection goes, but also as far as just sort of what's socially acceptable. And sometimes when the media is showing, social acceptability, sometimes the media sort of sets the social acceptability standard. So that's another neat thing that entertainment education can do. Quickly, disadvantages. Even though, I'll say this, even though your reading kind of says it's affordable, take it with a grain of salt. It could be affordable compared to like a mass campaign. I think it's a really relative statement. It also really depends on where you're implementing the campaign. As you notice, like this entertainment education endeavors are happening worldwide, and they're happening on all different types of mediums, and I don't think it's a necessarily fair to say that it's cheap. I really do think it depends. And the United States, for instance, and we'll focus mostly on the U.S. For the next reading, it's very expensive, right? To actually have an entertainment education campaign, you have to buy airtime. And that's another disadvantage, by the way, which is that it's really hard to do a really tightly controlled entertainment education campaign, if we can call it that, be in a media saturated environment where everybody has lots of media choices, because you might be able to create a whole soap opera that has these transitional role models or negative role models and transitional role models, and you might test it and so forth, but you have to get people to watch it. And you may have noticed, for instance, like Mina is an example of you should definitely look up some of these on YouTube if you have a chance, because you can actually see a lot of these in action. If you type in Mina, she's an animated character designed for children to teach them lessons, and she was very successful because she was in country. She was unleashed the Mina. Her program was put in countries where they didn't have a whole lot of media options. So the neat thing is that if there is a children's program available, there's probably only one, and that means everybody's going to be exposed to it. In that way, by the way, it is very cost effective, right? Because you can get more bang for your buck. But again, I really think it depends on the country. Just one final thought I want to bring up. I really wanted this to be an introduction. I could talk a lot about some specific examples if you're interested. I can help find some of these. Just let me know on eCampus, because it is neat to see. But I really want you to feel like this is a little bit of a review for us, because if you'll notice, the article covers a lot about what's needed in a good entertainment education project, and it's a lot of what goes into a good health communication campaign. You need really good formative research. You need to evaluate it as the program's going on to make sure the messages are received. You need summative research and evaluative research to inform not only sort of like what you do next, but also, again, the continuation of that campaign. I do feel weird calling it a campaign because it's a program, There's even a group in California called Hollywood Health and Society, which I think we'll talk about next week, where they don't really come up necessarily with the whole concept for a show, because we are very media saturated here. But what they do is they try to figure out ways that they can insert accurate health messages into pre-existing shows, and even that sparks a lot of research, right? Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts on this, and start thinking before we get into the next stage about entertainment education that you might have been exposed to. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a foreign country, although I like that you are seeing sort of the worldwide implications of seamlessly merging entertainment with education. But I have a feeling that you have been exposed to a lot of entertainment education in your own lives here, so I would be really interested in hearing about that. So, all right, see you on the discussion boards. Bye.